Hello, and welcome to Spirited Dialogue hosted by Transformity. I am Gautam Palapal, one of the founders of Transformity, a thought leadership forum that focuses on transforming humanity with empathy and technology. I'm an executive advisor at VMware, where I partner with C-suite and executives at Fortune 1000 companies and help them on their digital transformation journey. I firmly believe that culture and people are the most important assets of an organization, and we need to have optimal processes and cloud-native technologies in place to deliver those customer delightful products efficiently and in a sustainable way. I'm also the author of Leading with Empathy, Understanding the Needs of Today's Workforce, one of the 6 books that have been recommended by psychologists to help organizations and leaders nurture that positive culture and improve empathy, psychological safety, and increase workforce happiness. I'm excited to be joined by my fellow collaborator and dear friend Asanka, and I look forward to our dialogue today. Asanka, I would love for you to introduce yourself to the audience.
Hey, Gautam. Yeah, I'm excited to have this dialogue with you. Yeah, I'm Asanka, a Chief Technology Evangelist at WSO2. So WSO2, we are a technology company providing API management, integration, and identity and access management solutions. I'm coming from a product engineering and product architecture background. Addition to telling the WSO2 story, I'm providing strategic consulting for the key WSO2 customers as well. So as Gautam mentioned, we have been partnered for a while now, wrote many blogs during 2021 focusing on business architecture, and this is going to be a new journey for us during 2022.
Thanks, Asanka. And I'm super excited. This is going to be the first experiment that we're running together. And I hope that we'll have many more of these to come.
Exactly.
So today, I was thinking what we could do is focus on a topic that's on everybody's mind, and that is the Great Resignation, the Great Reimagination, or the Grand Reset, whatever you may call it. I personally like to call it the great introspection, because I believe that this phenomenon is occurring because people are starting to reflect upon what's valuable to them, and they're prioritizing their quality of life over a Tayloristic expectation of a world that we've lived in before. So it's pretty exciting, and I was thinking if we could start digging into that.
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting time. So there are a lot of negativity created with pandemic, but there's a positive side as well. And there were some different challenges we are facing as executives as well as a whole organization as well, right? So I think this is one area especially highlighted with the Great Resignation. And we are moving towards a new path as well as executives. We need to find solutions as well as look at new way of thinking on how we can handle this problem. So I think it's a great topic for us to discuss during a Friday evening.
Yes. And then we'll get into it a little bit more, but the reason why we're calling it Spirited Dialogue is because we want to keep it a little more informal. And at the same time, we are enjoying our favorite beverage, and we're gonna talk a little bit more about the beverages a while later. So to begin with, let's cheers and have a great conversation about it.
Yep. Cheers.
All right. So let's put things into perspective. In 2021 alone, over 48 million Americans quit their job, and that's a huge number. Over 4.3 million people quit their jobs in January of 2022, and that's just 2 months ago, right? According to the US Department of Labor, JOLTS report. And at the same time, we had over 11.3 million job openings. So that means there is a rapid rate of departure of people, but at the same time, there is not that much of an arrival of people as well. And so this thing intrigued me. And for those of you who follow us on social media, I recently posted on LinkedIn a few steps that organizations and leaders should consider to attract and retain talent. And that spurred a lot of dialogue. And I figured let's double click into that a little bit more. But what I want us to do, and I think in order to be fair to this complex problem, if you're okay with this, Asanka, why don't we focus on attracting talented people first, and then we move on to retaining the existing workforce and keeping them happy.
Yeah, I think it's key. Like we need to touch based on both topics, and both are very important. So I think it's a good plan to focus on the hiring or attracting this talent, and then we can look at the retention part after that. I think both of us been in the industry for 20 years on different management roles. So there are a lot we can share, not only during pandemic, but even before what we learned by
Yeah.
managing large technical teams.
Yeah. And a common theme that we have at Transformity is to talk about business value, about value, right? So I think the first question I would like us to explore is, when there are so many people in the market looking for a job or looking for a better avenue or a better opportunity, one of the key things that organizations need to do is try to attract the talent. So addressing and emphasizing why a candidate should choose your organization over anyone else's is one of the most important things. I mean, if you look at a traditional job description, it's pretty much these are the jobs, this is the job title, this is your responsibilities, this is what we expect you as a candidate to do, and so on. So it focuses more on the expectations from a potential customer, but I think the rhetoric has changed. The situation has reversed. We, as hiring managers, we need to sell the organization to potential candidates. And we need to reflect it not just in the job descriptions and in the posting, but also we need to find other avenues to reach out to them. What are your thoughts about that? Because that is something that really irks me, especially when I read some of the old job descriptions. They're
Yeah.
still so catering towards what the expectation is from a customer, but never why a candidate should really care or want to be part of the organization.
Yeah, so I'm 100% on the same page with you, because this is about the supply versus demand, right? Now the demand is really high, the supply is low. So the candidates can demand a lot, as well as they have many opportunities. So we are in a different ball game today. So that's where the point that you mentioned is going to be very important. So we have to attract the candidate in like when we post a job post in LinkedIn or any other job posting site, or an advertisement that we put somewhere, or the career page in the company website. We need to attract them by telling the benefits, as well as how kind of a challenging job this is going to be, and what are the gains in their career path that they can gain. All these things need to be highlighted clearly, not like a traditional boring job post. So that is one side of the story. And another issue that I identified during the interview process, whether we are telling the story about the company, as well as giving enough information about the job post that we have posted. Basically, it's a sales pitch, as you said. We have to do that pitch properly as the person who's interviewing these candidates, and take through that and give enough time for them to ask questions and then clarify the doubts that they have. So it's a different conversation, I would say, than a traditional job interview that we used to do in the past.
Totally, I totally agree. And in many places, I actually relate this more to like speed dating,
Mhm.
right? You are both as both interested parties trying to figure out each other, trying to figure out your fit, whether you have common goals, common aspirations, common culture, whether you can gel properly without too much of compromise,
Yeah.
right? That's literally what you're doing, but you don't want it to be like an imbalanced power play where, as a hiring manager, you feel that you are at a higher power level than the potential candidate, because then you're starting off that relationship on a bad footing, and that really doesn't help anyone. And that's why I get really irked by some of these job descriptions where you get all the buzzwords that are shoved in there in
Yeah.
a very verbose wall of text. And it really turns one off for two reasons. One, they there seems to be some kind of a hubris of reputation of the company in that job description, where they throw out the name of the organization and they say, well, we are X company, so of course you want to come and join us. But
Yeah.
that may not truly be the case. The company name might be different from the social reputation, and
Yes.
the digital footprint within the social media, right?
Yeah.
And the other thing is, when you see a wall of text, there's nothing exciting. There's nothing
Mm,
sexy about it. There's
agree.
nothing attractive. What are your thoughts about? This was something I tossed out and say, why can't a hiring manager talk about the team, talk
Yeah.
about a day in the life of the individual
Yeah.
contributor? What are the various things? Just show things around and say these are the cool things that you can expect, rather
Yeah.
than have HR translate and be that proxy and a
Yeah.
brand ambassador to the organization. What are your
Yeah.
thoughts?
Yeah, so I think there are two parts of this. I'll address the first part. So I think the people function, I don't like to call it HR anymore. So the people function should have uh, the required people to write these attractive job descriptions, and they should have creative people who can post these posts properly, because sometimes the hiring manager can give the requirements, but they might not have enough time to create that particular job post. So that's where I think the people team required this new way of handling these job descriptions and advertisements. And the other side, you said giving more insight. So I'll give one example. As an engineer, a long time back, the best interview I had was a full day spending inside the organization. So I went in the morning, they gave me breakfast, and I had the technical test. I did the test, and I got the chance to do pair programming with one of their engineers. And then that engineer became my buddy throughout the day. And I had lunch with them. After lunch, they sat with me and went through all the answers that I gave and reviewed, and even gave me feedback on each and every answer that I gave. And till 6:30, I was hanging around the organization. Main idea there to understand the culture, people, and have a better understanding about the organization. So with pandemic, I think it might be a challenge for some of the organizations, but I think we are moving back to a more hybrid model, right? So one thing we can do, get to meet as much as possible people from the organization. Like if we are hiring that person for a technical role, maybe we get them to talk to different departments, like it can be finance, it can be marketing, various other departments, and then let them to mingle with people more and more. And then I think one thing you mentioned, very important, as the hiring manager, we have to give that information. How interesting is the job? What type of challenges? And then if that particular candidate join, the impact that he or she can make for the company, as well as the career progression that we can work together, because it's a two-side game, right? Like we can't expect the candidate to do it by themselves, or the organization to take them in that part. It's a kind of a joint effort. So we can discuss that, and how that the hiring manager can be a coach, and then help the candidate, and take that partnership for a long term. So I think those are some of the things that I think we can do as hiring managers to have and attract better candidates.
You bring up a memory of mine. I also remember, and this is a while ago, so I'm probably not going to mention the year because I will date myself. But I went on an onsite similar to you, same experience. I was with the company. We spent about 8 hours together, so an entire day. We had someone who was a buddy who was following me throughout. We did a lot of whiteboarding. We did a lot of analytical architecture, coding, pair programming, you name it.
Yeah.
The thing that I liked about those, I mean, don't get me wrong, it was one of the most stressful days in my life
Yeah.
going in,
Yep.
right? But after hour one, it started becoming enjoyable. It became really, it made me happy because A, I'm getting to understand the life of a person working in this organization. I'm learning about the culture of the organization, like you mentioned, how people interact, how people work. What is the floor plan of the organization? Is it open? Is it
Mhm.
cube-like? Is it? There's a lot of collaboration. I'm able to see upfront the camaraderie and the interaction between people, especially when you go for lunch in the cafeteria, for example.
Yeah.
You can see everyone. There's such a buzz and there's so much of energy going on. So it sets you up so much. Um, but the other thing that I found personally that was so enjoyable and valuable about this was that people are respecting me as a person
Yep.
and they're valuing my time because they are dedicating an entire day for someone who may or may not join the organization, so they're actually trying to welcome and accommodate me. So that is something that I really really enjoyed. And like you said, it's really hard, especially when you're doing remote and you're trying to interview people virtually. These kinds of things are hard, but as we have seen over the last 2 years, you can do virtual pair programming, you can do virtual whiteboarding, you can do a lot of these exercises remotely, or you can even, you can either fly the person over to one of your locations and, find a Weverse or something, or have a team event where you can involve the person and immerse the person before they even start the conversation. And I think
Mm.
that's exciting, right? I mean, like
Yeah.
it really shows that they're valuing the person, not the skills that they're bringing to the table.
Yeah, and I think the valuing time, that's the key thing that you mentioned, because I see hiring managers and sometimes people who's in the interview panel, they kind of take this as a burden and then rush into this stuff. So as a hiring manager, I used to schedule most of these interviews on Fridays, especially like the time that I can make most of my time as well as a well-focused time for the candidates, that allows us to kind of do proper research, and then find find enough time for that particular person. Even sometimes I don't mind doing these kind of interviews during after office hours as well as even in a weekend,
Yep.
because sometimes these candidates are really busy, they might have family
Right.
commitments. So I think we have to have that flexibility as well, because most of my interesting interviews happen in cafeterias and then off hours. That something that I really like on some of the organizations that I work, they were really flexible with my schedule and then facilitate these interviews
Yep.
based on that.
No, I totally agree. So I just want to say one thing and then we can move on to the other thing. One of the things that annoys me the most, and you said, and this was triggered because you said hiring managers sometimes rush, right?
Yeah.
Through the motions or think of it as a burden. One of the things, and I understand in some organization it is really important, and maybe different people's work schedules are different. But one of the things that irks me is when I am, or at least in the past, when I'm interviewing with someone or when I was interviewing with someone and I hear that clacking on the keyboard where someone's either writing the notes or they are probably focused on something else, I know for a fact that the only thing the person is doing is listening to the words that come out of my mouth and transposing it into a different medium. I don't really know if there's any engagement. So I just wanted to share one of those first pet peeves of mine is the worst thing you can do, especially when you're working remotely and you're trying to get an interview, is hearing that keyboard go off
Mhm.
when you are talking. So,
Yeah.
so that's one thing. But I do want to get to the next thing, right? The next thing is so we've been around the block for at least 20 years. So we've been interviewing, we've been interviewed, we've done a lot of these things. One of the things that I feel, at least from a people organization perspective or a people hiring perspective, is we got to modernize our recruiting process. It is
Yep.
terrible at this time. We have too much of waste, we have too many points of friction and too many points of failure. I personally feel we have unnecessary rounds of interviews. We need to start having empathy for the candidate, empathy for the hiring manager. I mean,
Yeah.
I know there are some organizations that have 7 rounds, one panel, maybe one presentation, and then HR with for an individual contributor role. I mean, that's
Exactly.
crazy.
Yeah.
That's a lot of waste of time. And so that is something that I think we really need to do and focus on is modernizing our recruiting process.
Exactly, exactly. And it's a team effort with the HR or the people function and the hiring managers as well. We can't like uh, expect HR to do it by themselves. I think it's a team effort because end of the day, that person is going to work with the hiring managers team, right?
It is so that gets me an important to an interesting question, a quandary, right? The
Yeah,
quandary is who actually is hiring? Is it the HR person who is starting, or is it the
yeah,
hiring manager who's driving the conversation? And in a lot of legacy organizations or heritage organizations, I see that it is the people department that is actually driving the hiring process when it should be the hiring manager because the hiring manager is the one who's going to have the long-term relationship with the person.
yeah,
The other thing that I see is we still continue, and I don't know why, we hire for a job description or a particular job posting, and we don't really evaluate the overall potential of a candidate.
yeah,
I feel it's a criminal offense because you're spending considerable amount of time and resources and cost trying to interview a person, trying to get to know a person. Why would you not want to take the other step and consider the person for and evaluate them for their potential that they bring and the value that they will provide rather than whether they will fit that narrow definition of your job description? What are
yeah.
your thoughts about that? And I'm so passionate about this particular topic.
Yeah, so I think the one thing that I would like to highlight. So if you are a basketball fan, you should read this book called 11 Rings, written by Phil Jackson. So I think everybody knows Phil Jackson. Phil Jackson is the coach for Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant. So how a coach influencing the management and how a coach doing kind of a thorough job of picking the players in the team, because you have to think a lot, right, about the team chemistry, what's the contribution each and every player is bringing. So I think it's basically from that particular field, we can learn a lot about the process of hiring. And I think it's a little bit related to the next topic we are going to discuss in a different session on retaining. If we like stick to the hiring thing, it's a very important thing that we should consider. And we can learn a lot from this sports field and athletes and athlete coach, how they organize it. And with the agility and agile culture coming, even every team is like a small team, right? That with 10, 15 people. So we can relate more and more into that. Sorry, I think I missed the earlier point by going into the Phil Jackson story. Shall we rephrase the area that we were discussing?
So the thing I was saying was
Yeah,
we need to start evaluating the overall potential of a person and not
exactly.
limit ourselves to just the job posting or the opening.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's where I got into Bill Jackson as well, and I lost that point. Yes, I think that is very important because we can't just tick a set of things that we have listed on the skill set because they might not have that skill set at the moment. So I think the main thing is, as a coach or a hiring manager, whether we can build that person to that particular role, and whether this person is having the potential, as you mentioned, is the most important thing. I think we have great stories with specific candidates. I can't mention any names, and we had a candidate who led one of the security products that we released, and he didn't know anything about security when he joined the organization. And then there was another person who's leading sales at the moment, and he didn't know much about enterprise sales when he joined the organization. But then again, the potential led them to come into the organization. And as I said earlier, it's a kind of a game with the both parties, right? How the organization can facilitate this particular candidate to become that person. So I think it's key. And as a hiring manager, I think within first couple of minutes we can decide a lot. I would say that's a gut feeling. And I think that kind of gives you whether this guy is potential. And then we need to check few things like whether he or she is well prepared, have done the background search, because we can't just hire random people who just applying for the jobs, right? Whether they have done research about the company, and whether they have done a research about the job, as well as a person who's interviewing, whether they have done research about us, because
Yep.
smart people do that, and then they come and tell about various stories.
Yeah.
So, and the questions they ask, right? That's a very important thing. So we have to plan the interview by giving enough time for them to ask questions. I think that's the most important part of the interview, that we can that will help us to identify whether this person is having the potential to grow, and then can be the candidate who we are looking for at some point. So I know there's a business impact. We need people to be productive, but I think we can find paths for these smart people and expedite that, bringing a mentor, as
Mm.
well as having a proper onboarding process, as well as while doing training, let them to kind of do the real work as well. Without taking risk, we can identify
Yeah.
some low business impact related task, as well as some stuff that is not really affecting the line of business as well, right?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. So one of the things that I've always done is, apart from the technical side of things, after doing all that, I always make sure that I have some kind of problem solving or puzzles
Yeah.
in the thing, so that I can understand the critical thinking of the person, the way that the person will talk. If I throw a curveball, how would they think? The other thing that I find very wary is if a candidate doesn't ask me questions, I feel concerned because I'm not sure if the candidate is going to be extremely reserved or is going to be open enough within an organization and transparent enough and candid to challenge and question if they don't think that they are at a position to ask a question. So that's very concerning to me. But I plus one with you on the mentoring and coaching. More often than not, we have someone come in and then we just point them to a computing resource. So like, here's your laptop, here's your desktop. Here's all the links, here are the portals. Okay, go. And that's something we probably want to dig in a little bit more when we talk about retention
Yeah.
of the existing workforce and how to make them happy. But I want to end on this last question. Pay range transparency, one line. Are you for it or against it? What do you think?
I think we had to be transparent on that. I'm on that side, because transparency is key, not only with that, because this is a combination, right? If we don't have that trust, because trust is the most important thing for a long-term relationship. So we have to build it from day one.
Yep.
So that's where I am.
Awesome. And I'm with you. I'm in the same boat. I believe pay range transparency is essential. There are a lot of states like Colorado and New York, I think, that have already started implementing or mandating that organizations have to publish what the pay range is. So
Yeah.
that's a really good thing. But I think what I'll do is we probably want to end it on this particular note here because it's been such a great conversation. It's fantastic. And we've been talking about the attraction portion of things. I think the next time we're going to talk about the retention. But before you go, Asanka, I want to ask you, in the spirit of dialogue, what are you drinking today?
Oh, today it's Glenfiddich's single malt 15-year-old one of my favorites.
Nice.
Yeah. So what's your drink?
So I'm drinking a 15-year-old Glen Grant.
Huh?
It's a single malt, bottled at batch strength, so that's 50% ABV. It's a
Okay.
lovely whiskey, straightforward notes, balanced flavors, really nice experience.
Yeah.
It's very enjoyable, especially for someone for starting this conversation and having a lot of passionate discussions. This seemed to be one of the best scotches for me to start.
Great.
So yeah, I want to thank you all for tuning into our first episode of Spirited Dialogue. Please send your comments and feedbacks and approaches that have been worked in your organization to us at transformity.info@gmail.com, or you could use the hashtag Transformity. We would love to hear your thoughts and learn from you. Asanka, thank you. I always
Yeah.
enjoy this, and it's amazing that I'm going to spend Friday evenings as well with you.
Yeah.
So until next time, from both of us at Transformity, cheers.
Cheers.